Welcome to ABA on Tap, where our goal is to find the best recipe to brew the smoothest, coldest, and best tasting ABA around. I'm Dan Lowry with Mike Rubio, and join us on our journey as we look back into the ingredients to form the best concoction of ABA on tap. In this podcast, we will talk about the history of the ABA brew, how much to consume to achieve the optimum buzz while not getting too drunk, and the recommended pairings to bring to the table. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and always analyze responsibly.
All right. And this is your ever grateful co-host, Mike Rubio, and welcome back to part 2 with Nicole Parks. Enjoy.
Wow, damn near a double.
Right. So I was like, what would I even do with all that money? This is crazy. Now, what I didn't realize until I got there was, yeah, right, you're not going to be making that because it's not a salary. People are going to be canceling on you left, right, and center. You're going to be driving all over creation because I have clients from the mountains of North Carolina all the way over the border in South Carolina. And I was so miserable at that job. I was by myself for like the first however many months. My regional director lived in Florida. So I saw him like one time and like, he was a great person. He was wonderful. He did what he could to support me, but the system was just not set up for my success. And then eventually I did get one or two other behavior analysts in that area. And the three of us could kind of commiserate with each other about what was going on. But ultimately I was like, I don't like this setup. I'm not happy here. I don't like the idea that every hour is being accounted for. I'm driving all over the place. People are canceling. I can't give the support to anyone. I'm working like 50 hours a week and I'm getting paid for 25.
That's I don't want to sound glass half empty on this one, but it seems like that's not uncommon today. 12 years later, we hear that a lot. We see that a lot. We've gone to conferences. We hear of people talking about paying BCBAs exorbitant rates, much higher than even our reimbursement rates are. And we're like, how in the world is this happening? I don't even know how this is happening. You must be working these BCBAs to the bone. And kind of like you said, as a new BCBA, hearing that you can make double or make this amount of money, like, yeah, people don't know what they don't know, so they jump right into it, and they're like, this is awesome. And now they're driving wherever, they're having to work 50, 60-hour work weeks, and then they get burnt out really, really quickly. I still think, I don't know if it's an epidemic in our field, but it's definitely still prevalent in our field, your exact situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I ended up hearing about a job back in Florida with a behavior analyst that I knew from when I worked at the state of Florida. He was a behavior analyst whose treatment plans I would review and stuff like that. He was actually taking over a company. They were going to start working in early intervention and autism. They had previously been a med waiver company. And one of my friends had left a position there, and the psychologist I used to work with for the state of Florida, he was working there. So it's kind of like, hey, this would be like a real easy kind of like, just come do this job. Like, we already know you kind of situation. And so I went and did that. I ended up working there almost 6 years. I ended up being a regional director there. I had 2 centers that I was over, and ultimately they ended up bringing in private equity money.
As they do.
It didn't go well. I gave it a year under private equity. I wasn't feeling great about it to begin with, but I gave it a year and it was horrible. All my staff were miserable. They came in and made terrible decisions that were for financial reasons and no other reasons. And I was really, really burned out. And I remember I went to my husband. He was a stay-at-home dad at the time. He had been a stay-at-home dad for many, many years so that I could focus on my career. And I went to him and I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do, but like, if I don't leave this job, like, I'm not going to, like, I just can't do this anymore. I feel like don't have a soul anymore. I don't love this field anymore that I've loved my whole life. We have to do something. I don't know what's going to be. And I walked in and I resigned. I gave him 2 months notice. I walked away from a 6-figure salary and we sold our house and bought an RV and traveled for 9 months. So I figured out what to do with the rest of my life.
Oh, living the dream. Are we good on the audio, by the way? Okay. We relate to that so hard. The first company, the one I met Mike at, Mike was actually my first supervisor. I left just before and Mike left significantly before, but they got bought out by private equity. Heard about how bad it was. Everything was, KPIs. That's what we have to work to, not client, anything clinical, just KPIs. We got to do that. God forbid we ever have a supervisor meeting that talks about anything clinical. It's always about just maximize those contracts. So many people left. It created another company, the one that Mike and I just left kind of recently, which was different. Everybody ran from private equity, and then what do you know? They sold to private equity. Yeah. So there's a really interesting, cyclical nature, I feel like, in the field of that private equity. It seems very hard to escape. It seems like a lot of times the only way to escape it is to do your own thing. And then you're now faced with the challenge of, I'm sure private equity probably flaunts some pretty nice finances to buy these companies out. And then it's
what was kind of more heartbreaking for me is that that we didn't get bought out. Our company still existed. My boss stayed on as the executive director, but we just brought in the other people to be like the CEO and a new CFO and a new whatever. And I know that it was the right thing for my boss to do for himself personally. And I know he felt like he was doing what was going to save the company. It was ultimately what the company needed. But it was really heartbreaking because it completely changed our relationship. I felt like he only had so much he could do to support me because he ultimately didn't have the decision-making power anymore. You know, he was less than 50% ownership at this point. And so I am sure he was sad to see me go. And in a lot of ways, I was sad to leave that company because I'd invested a lot into it. But it just became very apparent that no one there was going to be supporting me. And it's really hard for people that have never been a clinical director and don't understand how much you buffer executive decisions from your direct care staff. And you hold all of that in. It's like so emotionally difficult because you're taking in all the staff issues, everything they're feeling, the client issues, the family's issues, and you're just absorbing all of this emotional turmoil all the time. And you're supposed to stay calm, cool, collected, in charge, whatever. And it's exhausting. It is so exhausting. You're at the clinic and all of a sudden you're like now a doctor, plumber, IT person, whatever. I mean, everyone just comes to you thinking that you just have the answer to everything.
Yep.
And it's just as exhausting. It's really, really exhausting, especially when you're not getting any support from the people above you.
Especially if the people above you, we dealt with this at one of our previous jobs when you're trying to advocate for your staff and the people above you are kind of ixnaying that. They're negating your advocate. They're like, no, we can't afford that or we can't do this. And you're really trying to advocate. But on the staff end, you're just hearing people being frustrated. So you're kind of getting it from both ends, right? You're getting it from the higher ups of, we don't have enough money. You got to make more. You're not doing enough. And then you get it on the lower end of we need more. We're not getting enough as you're trying to serve the clients at the same time. And like you said, you're dealing with all of the behavioral issues and the client side of things that I feel you. We were definitely wore that hat for a long period of time. And that is absolutely exhausting.
The one thing that gets me, and I'm going to overgeneralize here a little bit. Number one, I've yet to hear a good private equity story. Let me just start with that. Unless it's from the person that sold and then cashed out a little bit, and then sometimes they were against private equity the entire time until they sold and made some money. And again, I like the way Nicole put it. Good for them. You can't hate on somebody for that. But it does create this interesting internal conflict and dialogue with people. And I just don't, I guess it's hard to discern how to actually make that work. It seems as simple as have your bosses who are pushing the KPIs over and over, who push these numbers, and you can look at them in the face and go, wow, you have no idea what this actually looks like out in the field. And if you just spend a couple days out with us in the field, and then that seems to be an impossibility sometimes, just to get them to come out and watch. And then in the experiences where I've had them come out and watch, it always seems a very cursory observation. And then we're right back to just talking about numbers that are completely out of context with what the actual service parameter looks like. I don't know. I said a lot there. I don't know if it means anything. What are your impressions on that, Nicole? I mean, what's the answer? Is there a way to actually get, private equity to understand what the service is, or is this just a lost cause? This is just about money. It's called private equity. It's not called private equity and effective, efficient services. It's called private equity.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. I actually made a LinkedIn post about this. It's like the definition of private equity is like they're here to make money.
Mm-hmm.
They're investing money so that they can cash out that money in 3 to 5 years. Like it's there for a reason. That's what it's there to do. You don't want to completely like sour your product because then you have nothing to sell.
Right.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, like that's what you're going to be focused on is like cutting those corners. And business people know business, and behavior analysts a lot of times don't know business.
Yep.
They know behavior analysis. And I guess I should add that during my time as a regional director at this company, I got an MBA because I want to be able to speak business
Nice.
with people. So that's kind of like my thing is very innate in me, is that I always want to learn as much as I can possibly know about anything that I have to do. So in my role, like I learned how to do credentialing, hiring, everything. I was like, if it has to be done, I want to touch it. I don't like waiting on other people to do things. I'm an incredibly efficient person. So, to my own fault, sometimes like I take on a lot more than I probably should because I just want to make sure that ball keeps rolling. So yeah, I learned a lot. And so ultimately when I left that position, my job, or the reason I started Rooted Consultation originally, was I was going to help other companies start up ABA practices and be able to survive without private equity. So I was going to help people learn, like, this is what you need to know into OBN, right? Like, this is what you need to know about money. This is what you need to know about opening a business, being thoughtful about that, everything else. And I did help, a few different companies do that. But ultimately in that process, I learned that like the whole system is sick. Like the whole system has a problem. And it's only kind of gotten worse. I see behavior analysts post all the time. They're like, we're not getting paid enough. And I was like, have you ever looked at the dollars? Because most businesses I know who I've looked at their dollars are making zero money off of you, if not losing money on you to try to get you in there for that price. They are paying you more than they're getting reimbursed. And guess where that money's coming from? Your RBT reimbursement. Okay. And then we're like, we can't pay the RBTs more money. And the thing is like, it's a limited system. People think that this is some expansive system and that every person that owns an ABA company is just trying to like roll in the dough and like screw everyone else over. Are there people that are probably doing that? Sure. But not everyone is. And you can have like the best intentions of running a good ethical business, and the numbers are against you in a lot of states. The margins are just not there. They're very, very tight. If you make a mistake, if you get audited and you have to pay back insurance or whatever, you could be shut down in a matter of like months. That could be it. It could wipe you out. And I don't think people understand that. I don't think they understand that at all. And I'm going to say something that's not very popular. This will be, whatever, but I don't love the RBT credential. I don't love it. I think it came out of necessity from the insurance thing of like, we've got to just be serving more and more and more and more and more clients. We don't have enough BCBAs to do that. So now we're going to create an RBT credential. And essentially what it did is it like eliminated the need to have a BCABA credential. Those people, where are you going to get a job? There's almost no state where they need you for anything anymore, because if it comes to insurance reimbursement, they get paid no different for you than they do for an RBT. And a lot of insurances don't allow BCABAs to do 97155 or 56. So you're not helping out anyone. So it kind of got rid of that. And I feel like there's a really, not all RBTs, but when I've had to hire at any position I've been in the last several years, I almost would prefer to not interview you if you're an RBT already. I want you to be someone that I'm going to train from the ground up, and I will teach you behavior analysis. You come to me loving kids or loving, being a fun person or the personality traits basically that I can't teach. And I will teach you the science, because I find that as soon as people get that RBT credential, they come in. I have more people no show to interviews that are RBTs than anyone else. They will schedule an interview with you and just not come, not email you, nothing. Mm-hmm. They want to come in and they're like, well, I want $25, $30, $40 an hour because I could get that over at ABC company. And they know that that's what they're doing, because if you go on Reddit or Facebook groups or anything like that, that's what they're telling each other to do. Hey, you want to keep making more money? Leave that company, go to the other company, because they'll beat that company by $1 because they need a body. Yep. Because they want to start more clients. Okay.
So true.
So that is like, there's no stability for the clients that are being served. There's no stability for those companies because you keep rehiring and retraining and all this other stuff. So that's why I said, to me, the whole system is sick and broken, and we all have to work together to fix that, or we're just going to keep, I cannot stand to keep trying to solve the same problems over and over again and get nowhere with it. And that's why I was like, I kind of wanted to wash my hands of ABA therapy and just be like, y'all have fun and not focus, because I want no part of it anymore. It's just a mess, and we're not all on the same page about that. And I don't want to play this game anymore.
I have a couple thoughts on that, but I bet you do too.
No, go. We've got plenty to talk about here. Yeah.
We agree with that so much, and that was actually one of our kind of guiding lights. It's one of our visions, is we want to make the RBT position sustainable for RBTs, because it's not sustainable. But I have a question for you going back, because I want to make sure we understand exactly your premise here. So the RBT credential, you're not a fan of it because of kind of the way it's administered, or you're not a fan of it because it takes BCBAs away from doing direct work and puts it on the RBTs?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we're the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
It's not so much that it puts it on the RBTs, because I think before we had an RBT credential, that's still happening. They were just behavior techs.
Yep.
I don't think it's practical or possible for BCBAs to serve everybody.
Yeah.
But I think it's just kind of one of those, I think instead of helping people that are passionate about the field, and again, this is very general. I know some amazing RBTs, so I don't want to make it seem like this is everybody. But I also see a lot of people that are like, oh, what's a quick thing I can do that will make me good money? You could become an RBT. And then you're not in it for the right reasons.
Right.
And those are the people that are job hopping to get the next dollar, the next dollar, the next dollar, the next dollar. Listen, we all want to have a income that's livable. We all want a livable wage. Yeah. I don't think that there's anything wrong with any person wanting a livable wage. I 1000% agree that RBTs have really, really hard jobs. And if they work in a company that does not support them or adequately train them or any of those things, they have an even harder job. I think RBTs deserve to be paid well. But I think if the only thing you're worried about is making money in this field, in any kind of helping profession, you're in trouble.
I agree.
And that is one of the things that I tell people that want to get out of ABA therapy is I say, you are going to have sticker shock when you see what you are going to have to make in all these other places. Because if you want to work in all these other areas, there's a good chance you're going to take a pay cut of a lot, because you are blinded by insurance money.
Yep.
That is not realistic if you're going to work in these other places, and you have to be prepared for that.
I agree 100% with what you're saying, and this is not the field to get in if you want to make money. One thing we're running into in California is that so they passed a minimum wage of $20 an hour for fast food workers. We pay our RBTs more than that, but a lot of places don't. So you're talking about competition based on, the reimbursement rates. Margins are not that high. We don't have a lot of RBTs. Most of our services BCBA direct, although we do have RBTs at our company. But if you're saying that the way that a lot of companies are sustainable is that they about break even on the BCBAs, but make money on the RBTs, which is totally true. I've heard that from countless examples. Then the margin has to be high. The issue is the reimbursement rates are low, and people are going to make more money working at Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, or Wendy's than they are as an RBT, which is probably going to be way less stressful. You're not going to get hit and kicked and pooped on and stuff like that working at Chick-fil-A. Presumably.
Well, and the continuity of hours, the predictability of your paycheck, the idea that you're not going to not get paid that hour because some customer gave their chicken sandwich back, right? You get a cancellation as an RBT, that's it. Now you've lost 2 hours of your income. And it's really hard to predict that. I mean, here where we are in San Diego, I really feel for RBTs in the sense that they're carrying the weight of the work. And, sometimes not making enough, and it's not their fault. Some client went out of town, or there's not enough clients to then replace that or sub opportunities to help them. And now that means they don't get paid. So yeah, to your point, and I've said it here on the show, I I know that people went and got a psychology degree hoping to work with that psychology degree. People don't do that to then go work at Chick-fil-A. All due respect to Chick-fil-A workers. I don't think that's the ultimate vision of getting your master's in psychology, but the idea that you could work as an RBT, and I like the point you make, Nicole. There's a heart work aspect to it too. You're not in this for the fame and the money, and hopefully some of us actually do get there at some point because we discover something great for a lot of people. But you're doing this really because you care about working with people, and there's a lot of reinforcement value in the outcomes that you're able to be a part of, as well as the idea that you get paid for it. On any good day, if I've done a lot of early intervention, I'm like, I got paid to play all day today. That's really cool, and that parent was really happy, and that kiddo was really enjoying it, and that parent got to see that kiddo do something that they'd never done before, and that has all sorts of collateral effects that I can't even begin to measure right now, and that feels really good. And I really wish that RBTs could, that really have their heart into it, could benefit from that and have continuity in their work. The assumption is that any RBT, any good RBT worth their salt, is going to become a big bad BCBA. That's not fair. I mean, you should be able to work as a career RBT if we get this right. So I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that people need to think about the fact that some people just want to be an RBT. Some people don't want to go back to school, and they shouldn't have to. There should be places and ways for them to grow in the companies that they work in. And one of the companies that I did, I started off consulting for, but ultimately stayed on as the clinical director because I was asked to do that for a while. One of the big things that we did is we created jobs. There was no layout of this is all the jobs we're going to have. We basically had RBT plus kind of things. So I'd meet an RBT, he's like, you are fantastic with other RBTs. You make them feel so at home. You answer questions for them. People are coming to you. You're going to be the RBT mentor. You're going to get a pay raise. This is going to be your thing. And this is what you're going to do. New RBTs, you're going to meet with them and you are going to check in with them. And they're going to feel like they have a peer that's not a supervisor of theirs that they can really commiserate with. Or, hey, you're really good at training. You're going to be the RBT trainer. You're RBT plus. So now you're the trainer. Or you're really great with curriculum development. So you're going to do that. And just making room for that and letting that be a little bit organic. I mean, you want to have somewhat of a business plan, but some things need to be organic because you just meet people that have skills that you weren't even thinking about that can now benefit your business in some way that you weren't even thinking about. And I think that kind of brings to mind, too, the fact that, and this is something I don't think RBTs take into consideration, is there are companies that will make sure that you have a more stable paycheck. That's the one thing that RBTs will say all the time, right? I wish I had a stable, consistent hours. If a company is going to do that, you're going to make less per hour because it's just math. The math will not math otherwise. So you can either get paid more and only get paid for the hours you work, or maybe you get paid a little bit less, but I can give you some admin time when I have a cancellation. I can give you additional training.
Yep.
I can say hey, this person's struggling during supervision. They're really not getting DTT or whatever the case may be. And I'm going to pull you and I'm going to give you additional training hours one-on-one for that. And I can afford to do that because I'm not at my tippy top pay range.
Absolutely.
It's one thing we're playing with a little bit, right? The notion that, and this is difficult because for a young professional, the higher wage is always going to be more attractive. But the idea that we can say lower wage overall on average, but guaranteed aspects of your job so that when you cancel, you still have work. And we can use that time for professional development as well as program development. So you're doing something now, from a business perspective, and I am not a business guy, I know that becomes troublesome for people in terms of the numbers because now you're paying when nothing is coming in. But we're really hopeful to try and crunch those numbers differently and continually looking at the idea of, let's spend a few bucks to have that RBT go buy materials as opposed to pay them time to make them, whatever it is. How do we keep things going? How do we spend more time with the RBTs in session? How do we do those things that maybe are going to compete with that $3-4 difference on the hour and create some semblance of continuity? Until recently, we went through an experience where we were working for a better part of 8 years under a capitated contract, which I know people have concerns about, rightfully so. But what it meant for us is that it just incented us to recommend the hours that we thought people needed along with what they could actually sustain and receive. And that was incredible. And the idea that our RBTs got canceled on, came back to the office, did program development or professional development, or just sat and talked about casework, or maybe just took an hour break. Imagine that. Somebody gets to chill out at work and talk to their colleagues. It was amazing. Before COVID, we had nobody leave. I think we fired one person, and two people left to pursue higher education or something. It was the most incredible continuity I've ever experienced. And we're really keen on trying to get back to that, despite some of the illness and clear symptoms in our system, which I think you put very poignantly. I think that's true. We have, from the reimbursement rates to what we've made the RBT position, to the way a lot of us are conceptualizing service delivery, there's a lot to be remedied.
Yeah, we didn't lose anybody. Like you said, we had guaranteed hours, paid admin time. We weren't the highest pay, but we didn't lose anybody. We had a great company culture. People could count on their money, even through COVID. Like, nobody lost any hours through COVID. We transitioned through telehealth. And then kind of towards the end of COVID, there was an interesting shift of people being like, not a lot, but like we said, we went from zero turnover to a little. I know a lot of ABA companies deal with a lot of turnover, of people being like, I can make another $1 an hour somewhere else.
And then we went fee for service too, and I think that changed a lot of the culture. So.
You can make another $1 somewhere else, but you're not going to have guaranteed hours. You're not going to have any admin time and things like that. So think about it. But again, these sometimes are young professionals, and they see I can make $26 instead of $25 an hour. And sometimes I would break it down and be like, look, you're actually going to be making significantly less because it's not going to be guaranteed, and you're going to have cancellations. You're going to be driving, things like that. But like you said, some people just see that extra $1. So you said the system is sick. What is your solution? You mentioned you just kind of got out of the system because you didn't see it as fixable. Is that the solution? Or is there a solution within the system?
No. Well, and the thing is now I'm back in.
You're in. That's right.
I just opened an ABA therapy company in Colorado. But the thing is the only reason that I did that, the person that I co-founded it with was a BCBA for me. She actually started as an RBT and became a BCBA under me when I worked in Florida. And then I brought her to a company in Georgia with me where I had stayed on as the clinical director. And she and I both want to fix the system. And so the only way I was willing to get back in again is if we were going to do something totally different.
Same.
And we really want to prove that there's a different way to do things. So we're doing low dose only, never above 20 hours. We're really going into
love it.
Kids need to be kids. Kids need to be with their families. Kids need to do other things. And so we're trying out some policies that we're not sure how they're going to go. But we want them. One of the things is that we're going to close 1 week every quarter, and we're going to pay our staff to be off, and our kids are going to be off, and it coincides with kids' school calendars. And we're going to encourage them to take a vacation with their family and their siblings, and have a nice little reset for our staff. There will be like a few hours of that first day that we're going to do staff training. We're going to capitalize on that. Now, of course, the con to that we have to explain to staff is that means that when you take additional PTO, it's going to be unpaid. Well, it's not going to be PTO. When you take additional time off, it's going to be unpaid, but you are getting almost 4 weeks off paid a year. You will be able to schedule vacations and stuff around this, but you can have weddings and other things that are going to come up. And a really good sick policy, because Colorado mandates a good sick policy. We actually opened in Colorado. Neither of us live there. We opened there for a reason, because we felt that the culture there, the climate there, the laws there were very supportive of what we were trying to do. We don't plan to ever have a clinic. We want to follow our kids where they naturally want to be. So from home to pre-K to school, we can get into the schools in Colorado a little easier. So we have heard. And the parents that we've met with there are very open to this. We start all of our cases with parent consulting first. They have to go through parent consulting using the balance program, Dr. Hanley's balance program. They have to do that with us for about 4 weeks. I mean, it's not like a dedicated timeline, but we want to see a certain amount of progression through that program with us before they're even paired with an RBT. We want to make sure we have parent buy-in. They know from the beginning that they're expected to be participating. We want them participating. They have a good relationship with their kid, because the first thing we're worried about is connected relationships. And that's from Dr. Megan Miller de Leon. It's, you need to have those connected relationships first. And that's what we're focused on. And then kind of going through that and
She saw
has
our
a whole
business
framework.
plan. You saw our business plan, Nicole, because that's like the exact thing that we're doing here.
I didn't, but she has a whole thing that she's put a ton of thought and research into, and she's
Nice.
able to use that on a small scale with some consulting that she does. But we're really trying to put it on like a big scale because we want to be able to show like this is a new way to think about things. This is a new way to do ABA.
Love it.
And to show that there are outcomes, because here's the thing is that it's going to happen to us whether we're ready for it or not. Value-based care is coming. And we've done that to ourselves by asking for 40 hours, no matter what, not showing outcomes, not having parent participation. They gave us a lot of rope and we're hanging ourselves with it. And now we're going to have to pay the price. And so I think before that happens to us, let's go back to research and show this can work. This can be effective. You can have good outcomes. And if not, happier outcomes for the staff and the clients.
You mentioned that nice buzzword research. One of my favorite things in our last 8 months of operations has been to get a call from a parent who says, "Oh, you have a wait list? We're actually new. We can get you going right away. And how many hours a week do you require?" I'm sorry, excuse me? Well, we call somebody else somewhere else, and you have to be 25 hours in clinic, or otherwise they don't offer you services. That's not the way we work. Now, I know that if I went back to those people that were touting the 25 hours, I know exactly the slew of articles that they would demonstrate to me to provide their evidence base. You picked 20. Tell us about that. Where does that come from? It's exciting. So we want to know, you're going the other direction, 20 or below. We like it. How did you guys come upon that decision?
Honestly, we just came upon that by thinking about a child and what their life normally looks like and what we thought could be a reasonable amount of time they could spend in therapy and still have a life.
Love it.
That's the best I got for you right now. You know?
No, that's good.
So we got to figure out the social validity thing. But we're really focused on the applied here.
We like it.
Like, are we going to get what is effective for these families? Also, really long sessions can drag on. So our thought process right now is like, you're not going to have session for more than 2 hours. So if you're a kid that's 4 hours a day, it's going to be 2 hours, a break for an hour, and then another 2 hours. RBT has time to have lunch, maybe do some programming. Kid has time to like nap or chill or just be with their family or whatever the case may be. Because you're not hitting it. If we're all realistic, you are not hitting it hard for 6 or 8 hours in a session.
No,
it's respite.
No,
absolutely not. So if you're there for 40 hours, like you're not hitting it hard for that whole time.
I love what you just said too. We think of intensive services in terms of the span of hours, and we don't necessarily, it's hard to quantify, but how attentive are you for those 2 hours? I think a lot more intensity comes from that. And I speak personally now, knowing that we started purposefully with BCBA Direct to try and control cost and our investment. I'm on the order of 20 hours direct, a week these days. And you learn a lot. You remember a lot when you're the one hands-on. Like, there is no way. There is a session that I do with a couple of siblings that spans 4 hours, but it's 2 boys, and for better or for worse, they've learned to work together. So we are together for 4 hours. It's downright exhausting. It is downright exhausting, and the parents will give me the same feedback. We love when you're here because then you leave them and they're so settled and they sleep so well. And I'm like, yeah, me too. I'm exhausted. Yeah. But I think that we forget about that, rightfully so. You get into your pattern. I got into my pattern, going in, doing supervision. You come in, you model a couple things, but you're not on for those 2 hours,
Yep.
And I think once you remember that, you can then appreciate the RBT a whole lot more. The idea that we're going to put you at a school site with a really intensive student for 6 hours, and then we're going to expect that you could do a home session for 2 to 3 hours. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. So one thing that we're trying to do is trying to limit the day at 6 hours, 2 hour sessions, trying with rare exception if
you're saying
the RBT, right? So limit the day, three sessions, 2 hours apiece, 6 hours. If you absolutely want to help us out with more than 6 hours of day of direct, we'll give that to you. But we're trying to do the math so that the 6 hours accounts for their 2 hours of admin time for the day, whether they want to put it in office or do some materials or just go home and call it a day because they had 2 rough sessions or whatever it is. I think that's really valuable. So I appreciate that you're like, we're going on a hunch, 20 hours because that's about the kid. And then on our end, we've been thinking about the RBT as well. And I'm so grateful. It was so daunting at first to start the experience. And go back into being the sole direct, delivery person. But I've learned so much, and I've learned to appreciate the RBT position that much more.
I love the 20 hours piece too. I don't think we have any clients that have more than 10 a week. We're low as well. And
I think eight's the highest right now.
Eight's probably the highest. Yeah. And that kind of came from our previous job too, where we had the capitated funding. So we were never pressured to, with fee for service, a lot of times it's more hours, more hours, more hours. I've been in countless supervisor meetings, like I alluded to earlier, where it was never about how's this person doing clinically? What are we doing? It's when are they available? Okay, schedule hours then. And then what happens is so we're taking, these people are having problems with their daily routines. And we're coming in to work on the daily routines, except they can't have the daily routines because all of their time is session now. So we're changing their routine and then showing progress and then having them try to now fit that back into the naturalistic routine, which we've taken from them. And I think what you're saying is let's fit into their routine. And that's what we want to do. If you're having a difficult time with dinner, maybe we'll be there at dinner. Or maybe we'll teach you the strategies that you can implement at your dinner routine, but you don't have to have dinner at 3:30 because that's when the session is, or we're not going to have a 9-hour session so we can be there at 3:30, but hit some billable amount of hours, like fit it into the family's routine. Now, the question is that going to be sustainable financially, which we're going to find out because that's tricky, right? Block scheduling is really nice in terms of scheduling. Predictability. But there is that balance between scheduling and fitting into families.
The odd correlation and proportionality between the availability of the family and the hours recommended. It's a real quandary. Wow, they happen to be the same. That's odd. How does that work? Did you actually assess, right? Now, again, we trying to stay away from that. And I like the way one of our mantras has been, ABA fits into your lives as opposed to having you take out a second mortgage and pull your kid out of school because you got to make the clinic so many hours. Or otherwise, we don't serve you and you're facing a 6 to 8 month waiting list with the providers and the other symptoms to the illness that you were alluding to.
Yeah. And I mean, as a business owner, I know why businesses love the 40 hours because it's really easy to staff.
It's awesome. Are you kidding?
It's really easy to staff 40 hours. Okay. It is. Staffing gets way more complicated when you don't have 40 hours to work with.
Of course.
But, there are businesses that blatantly say, all right, you are going to school now, so we don't serve you anymore because if you need less than 40 hours, we don't do that
heard
anymore.
That.
And of course, they'll try to be like, oh, it's not like, they'll try to have some like legitimate reason for why that is, but we all know why that is because it's a lot more complicated to staff and schedule kids that are not just there 40 hours a week. And so basically they're like, well, we only do early intervention. So now we need to pass you on to someone else because we, don't know how to work with older kids. No, you just don't want to work with older kids. And then now older kids are piling and piling and piling up and like, you can't take all afternoon kids no matter how much you want to. I mean, that just is not going to work for a business unless you have all part-time staff and you only want to work between the hours of like 5 to whatever. So there has to be some balance that you have to find somewhere to make the business side of it work too. But you really have to be thoughtful about how you're doing that. And to me, like just saying everyone needs to have 40 hours is lazy. I just think that's lazy.
And that goes back to your question you talked about earlier about the private equity piece and never hearing a good story about private equity, except for the owners that sell or the private equity that comes in and tells you how great they're going to be. It's just those differing motives, right? That clinical piece, like you were talking about how much easier it is to schedule 40 hours. And that's what private equity will do. They'll just look at it from that end. And I don't think they're necessarily inherently opposed private equity in clinic, but their motives are different. Like the company that we just left that sold, private equity came in and was frank and said, we're going to try to sell this in 5 years. And their goal is to try to make it look as good as on paper in 5 years so they can turn around and sell it. Now, does that mean you can do good clinical service? No, not necessarily. But all of the meetings are going to be, and the focus is going to be on hitting those metrics so that it looks good in 5 years and you can sell it and turn it into a profit. And I think that is, while it's not necessarily diametrically opposed, definitely the motives are different and lead to what you were just talking about, Nicole.
Yeah. And I mean, the financial part of it is not the only reason why this system is sick, as I say. The other one is we've got too many new BCBAs that are not being trained by other people. It's like the blind leading the blind, right? I mean, like you could be a BCBA for like 2 years and now you're going to be a clinical director.
Yep.
And it's going to be now your job, who has never had any experience with leadership, running anything, anything else, to now train a new BCBA that literally just passed their exam yesterday. And so you're trying to help each other out, and neither of you really knows what you're doing. There's not enough seasoned people to actually train you. They're just trying to fill positions. It's like, we've got to have more BCBAs. We have wait lists. We want to serve people. And I get that. I understand that that's what we want to do, but we can only do so much. We need to have a little bit of quality control here. Like, I don't think you should be a clinical director when you've only been a BCBA for a couple years and you have very little experience doing even like client services at this point. And now when you bring in like needing to have leadership skills, coaching skills, mentoring skills, training skills, that's a whole different skill set. Ultimately, you should still think about it like a behavior analyst, which is usually when I coach people, I say things like, would you blame your client if they weren't learning? Then why are you blaming your staff?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You trained them.
Yep.
You taught them, or you did not train them properly. So look at your staff the way you would look at a client. You're not going to blame a client for not learning. Don't blame your staff for not learning. Did you give them the supports that they need? Did you do, training with them? But we're very quick to say like the staff are just lazy or, whatever.
Man.
And that's not the case.
Anything you want to say on that, Mike? I know that it's...
Yeah, one of my more recent experiences was just had gone really sour, and I felt very a lot of empathy actually for the business owner, because that person did have this impression that these RBTs were out to get them and to ruin the business, and they always wanted to take time off, and they're lazy, and it's like, man, that's got to be a bad situation to be in if you feel like that about your staff. How do you sit in front of them at meetings and provide this now praise? Is that empty? I don't know. It just felt so like such a bad place to be in. And again, I understood the quandary that they were in, and understood the pitfalls that they'd created. And we hope to do better. So I don't mean to be overly critical as much as Dan had to nudge me there, because we were just in that situation where, we'd be in these directors meetings, and it was like, man, you really feel like your staff is out to get you. That's unfortunate. I don't know what to tell you. Like, they're actually really good people and they're working really hard. I got to tell you, Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, everyone I coach is to go to every situation with curiosity. So if you have a staff that's frequently late, did you ask them why? Do you have them scheduled super early in the morning and they're commuting in from like a 50 minutes away or something like that, and they always hit traffic? Is there something we could do? Can we start their session a little bit later instead of assuming that this is their fault? Could we do like a quick little modification like that?
Little
like
things.
If they're out of uniform, could we ask them, hey, I noticed you're out of uniform. What's going on? And they're like, oh, my washer broke. And then that gives them an opportunity to say, you know what, next time your washer breaks, if you could just come up to me and be like, hey, I know I'm out of uniform, but my washer broke. That little bit of communication is going to save us both a lot in the long run. And you're just like, hey, no problem. Washers break. Be in uniform next time. Not a big deal.
Yep.
Instead of just assuming like that person just doesn't want to be in uniform. They just don't care.
Well, do you know what the solution was at the meetings? This always made us laugh. But yeah, we had some RBTs that were canceling a lot. And you know what the solution was? You want to take a guess, Nicole?
Was it punishment? Was it punitive?
It was punitive, right? We got to write them up. We got to write them up and let them know if they don't start making their sessions, then we're going to suspend them or cancel them. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's it. So they're already overworked, and you sitting down and talking about how you're going to punish them, and that's going to get it done. Okay, yeah. I remember, a lot of us were kind of looking at each other like, what?
Are we behavior analysts around this table, or do we have any better ideas?
Because if I don't like something, punishing me is going to make me like it more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you get cancellations. I've had, this happen with business consultant or business clients of mine. And they're like, well, the staff is always canceling on like Friday afternoons. And so it's like this automatic thing, like they're probably just going on vacation. I said, who's their client on Friday afternoons? Oh, it's so-and-so. Have you ever asked them if they need extra support with that case? Maybe there's something particularly challenging about that case, and they have not felt comfortable yet coming to you to say, hey, I'm not sure what I'm doing with this case, or I need extra support. And so instead, they're just avoiding it by canceling. And it has nothing to do with it being the weekend. It has everything to do with that case. oh, you know what? I never thought about that. I'm like, let's think about that.
Yep.
Maybe that's what's happening.
Or
we have not created a culture of safety, of psychological safety, and they don't feel comfortable coming to you for help. And that's a you problem that you're going to have to work on. But let's start with going to them and being like, hey, can I give you some extra supervision? Is there anything going on with that case? Is it challenging? Like, how's the program going for you?
Yeah, I love that. And also, or the supervisor never goes out and supports them on the Friday session as well. And then they just complain about the staff canceling all the time. But it's like, why? You've also never gone out on the Friday session.
Well, I've got to start my weekend.
yeah, exactly.
The BCBA's got to start their weekend. What's the problem here? What do you mean? That lazy RBT's canceling.
It made me think about it too when you were talking about the economics thing, but the other thing that's sick about the BCBAs, starting and clinical directors and things like that within 2 years experience, that a lot of times, again, goes back to the meetings and the support that they're getting. Are the BCBAs from the higher ups getting support about clinical matters, or are they getting support about how to meet your hours? Because at the end of the day, what's going to flag somebody to come in and get a meeting? Is it them not meeting their hours or some clinical issues? And at least in my experience, a lot of companies aren't really going to know if the BCABA or the BCBA is providing a good clinical service unless it gets really bad and a parent calls and complains. They're not going to know. So they're just going to assume everything's fine. Now, the higher-ups will know if they're not meeting their hours. So all the meetings will be about that. And additionally, sometimes a lot of the bigger companies, they'll have, was it the DQA, the Director of Quality Assurance? So they'll have quality assurance managers, but the quality assurance is only in congruence to the insurance mandates of how the session should be run. So are you writing your goals in the way the insurance wants you to write your goals? Are you doing it in congruence with that, which is important? Absolutely. You got to pass an audit. I'm not saying that's not important. And I've actually learned a lot now working with insurances. The previous company that Mike and I talked about, we had a very lenient insurance that really didn't overlook our goals too much. And we were very ethical in the way we wrote them. And now we've gone into the real world where insurances are very nitpicky. And I've actually learned a lot. And there's a lot of good things there. But the point being, either they're getting oversight on the hours piece, or they're getting oversight on the quality, but only in relationship to how it will fail an insurance audit. Never really how's the actual quality? Is this kid having a good time? If you're doing Ascent, are you doing that? Are you running the sessions the way you want them to run? Is it functional? Is it productive? That stuff is just not being looked over at all in my experience and what I'm hearing. Speaking of what you were saying.
Part of the problem with that is that they call them a clinical director, but what they really are is an operations director. Yeah. And those are two separate positions.
Director of the clinic.
Clinical director.
Yeah. Not a clinical, but the
director,
clinic. Yeah.
Right. Clinical director means I'm overseeing the clinical work that's going on practice. Here. I am learning best practices, and I am telling those best practices to my staff. I am making sure that we're always keeping up with those kinds of things. Operations director is monitoring hours, compliance, all that kind of stuff. But what they try to do is make those one position. And on top of that, you're also going to carry a caseload, because apparently you can do all those things.
Yeah.
I really like that delineation. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's an excellent point.
I think it should be illegal for a clinical director to carry a caseload. I really do. I understand why people do it. They want them to pay for themselves a little bit. And I get that. But if you are a good clinical director, you don't have time to carry a caseload. Not well.
My hope in some future, I have a caseload now, but in some future, my hope is to be doing about 4 hours a day of direct client contact, because I'm overseeing existing cases on our roster in general. That is really my vision, to one day say, I'm going to be in the office 4 hours a day doing this, that, or the other in development. And then at least 4 hours a day, I'm out supporting, whether it's a BCBA or an RBT, because
or a parent group
or a parent or something. The idea is, yes, I am billable, to use that dirty word directly, but I really like the way you put that. Are you overseeing something? Or are you really just now siloed into this list of 10 clients that you're probably not giving your all to, because you're spread rather thin? Nicole, have we had a chance to talk about Rooted enough? I want to make sure that we give you a chance to. So you talked about your new practice, and then give you a chance to talk about the work you do with Rooted and your vision there. You're a chief visionary officer. Did I get that right? That's quite a title.
Yes.
Tell us about that, please, before we end today.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I am trying to focus on how do we branch out? How do we get to other places? That's ultimately what I want. I want to get back to what I consider the old days of ABA when we just served people, we made life better, and we weren't siloed into autism therapy. I think one of the things that's very important to that is supervision. My supervision program is about focusing outside of ASD. So all the like scenarios, cases, everything we talk about is across the gamut. I will give you cases that are like in gerontology, forensics, clinical,
Nice.
in a school, with pets, whatever, because to me, the way that you build fluency with concepts is you can apply them in a lot of different ways.
I love that.
And I feel like that's going to make you prepared to take the exam and be a good behavior analyst. Also, people that are in our supervision program, I expect them to have a kind of like a dream, a passion, something that they're wanting to do for the field. Like I want them thinking about like ultimately what impression am I trying to leave? What am I trying to bring to the science? And so a lot of the people I work with are looking to expand outside of ASD. And I want people to understand that you don't have to ever be an RBT and you can get supervision and you can become a BCBA. People think you have to be working as an RBT to have a client or to get those kind of hours or whatever, and you don't. You never need to do that. You never need to set foot in there if that's not where you want to be. I have a theory that even though 70% of behavior analysts work in ASD, only about 50% of those people actually want to be there. And I did like a little informal poll on LinkedIn, and it was very small sample size, but the numbers showed to be about that. People are trapped there because they think that's where they need to be. And it's not the best for the clients either if you're in a field that you're not comfortable in or that you're not happy with, right? Because your satisfaction is not going to be great. So I'm really trying to like push that and then push how do we get into these other, areas? How do we like, make ourselves available in these other areas? For me personally, the areas that I want to apply ABA is with human trafficking, domestic violence, and kind of like clinical decision making in the courts as far as how we decide what programs we're going to put people in that are charged with domestic violence, how we can educate the community on identifying human trafficking. What do we do to help those people? And so those are kind of some of the things that I'm working on kind of like privately. No one's paying me to do that. I don't just have like some great gig with someone. I have to do the same things that other people are going to have to do that want to figure out how to go other places. Is you've got to network. You got to connect with other people. You have to figure out what we can bring to those areas. So that's what I really want to do.
Can you speak to that a little bit, Nicole? That's really interesting. You said domestic violence and human trafficking. Like how do you anticipate bringing ABA into that?
So I think if you think about like Milton Berger's studies with like gun safety and like kidnapping and stuff like that, we kind of use that same philosophy, like that kind of BST training to get people to identify trafficking victims. So they are starting to do that a little bit more. In fact, there are some states where the board to become a licensed behavior analyst actually require you to take a human trafficking education class because of the
Interesting.
The division that it falls under, if it falls under like psychology or something like that. So that's great. But I think it's really like getting out there, and a lot of things are going to come from grant money and stuff like that. They really are. You've got to get a grant. You got to show that you have a program that's worth having, and then you can get more dollars. I mean, that's really how you like kind of get some of these things funded. But showing that we could train people that work in hotels, restaurants, hospitals, things like that to identify victims of human trafficking. And then what do we do once we've identified them? So like getting them, in contact with other agencies and stuff that can help figure out how to give some assistance to these people.
Wow.
And then with domestic violence, it's really, my husband is a clerk in the court system right now. And so I get to hear a lot about how decisions are made. And there are sentencing guidelines, but that's all they are. They're guidelines. And so I like the idea of being able to actually say, doing like a more formal risk assessment and saying, what supports does this person have? What is their offense history? And then what do we think would actually be an appropriate sentence for that? And I think it's not necessarily immediately incarceration. I think it's like programs. And there is a program that a lot of them have to take if they're like first-time offenders in domestic violence. But we have no measure, like no outcome measure. Like, is that effective? Is that not effective? What even is that course? And so you start with basic things like that, like, hey, how about if I come, can I review your course? Could I give you some tips on how we could make this a better course? Could we start tracking outcomes data? Can we see what actually follow some of these people and figure that out? And so I'm kind of starting with a little bit of that right now. I got a ton of data from the court system here sent to me on all of the domestic violence cases, human trafficking cases, sex offense cases. In the past, I think I had them send me like the past 10 years or something. It took them a while to get all that together. So I'm going to sort through and filter all that stuff. And then I have to work with the, legal system or the, police department and work with those units and try to figure out like, what do these people look like? What do these offenders look like? And try to get some profiles of them to dig together. But part of the way that I kind of got to doing that is one, having a husband that works in the court system. And also he and I went and did a program where you could, as a community member, you could work with the police department as like a citizen police academy and learn all about the divisions and stuff like that. And then we registered as volunteers with the police department. So that gets me, I start getting embedded a little bit where I can, again, make some friends, get to know some people, figure out how the system works. I know, for example, that our SVU unit here, everything is completely understaffed in law enforcement right now for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of social reasons why that's happening. But here, I think one of the biggest facts I heard when I went through the Citizen Police Academy that really upset me is that the Kentucky Derby is one of the largest events that human trafficking occurs at in Louisville. And because we are so short-staffed, the SVU detectives, instead of going out and finding these victims that they know are there and they have ways to identify them, they're actually put on traffic duty.
Wow. Because
traffic is so bad and they're so understaffed that they have to do that. They basically just have to turn a blind eye to the trafficking they know is happening in our city every year during this event so that they can go do traffic duty.
It's a great use of resources.
And I heard that, and I'm like, one of the first things I'm thinking of is how do we get more, because they're citizen, there are like citizen safety officers kind of thing. We have like that safety officer program that helps with like conducting traffic at schools and things like that. How do we beef up that program and get them at the Derby directing traffic so that our SVU officers can actually be catching traffickers? So it's looking at things like that. And looking at systems and figuring out where are the systems broken and how can we get in and fix them. So when people say I'm interested in forensic ABA, I'm like, which part? What? You need to get more specific because that's very general.
The domestic violence piece, I think, is a very important topic that is either highly sensationalized or just doesn't get spoken about enough in serious enough tones. I'm really glad you're looking into that. I had a chance to, in terms of the courses, the idea of these court-mandated anger management situations. I think there's a lot of help to be lent there. I think a lot of these things are check boxes. So you go through it because you're being told to do it, and you go sit there, and even the people that are delivering these are probably very privy to that. You're making the money. It's a checkbox. You don't care what happens after that. The other piece that I'll mention that we're looking into prospectively that I also think needs a lot of help within a similar vein there, domestic violence and family courts seem to be, unfortunately, very synonymous. Supervised visitation for parents is something that is exorbitantly priced and, as far as I understand, pretty darn useless in terms of actually teaching a parent who's being supervised how to remedy whatever issues have come up, how to work with the other parent to maybe not interpret certain parenting, situations in certain ways that are now detrimental or advantageous given the case. There's a lot of messiness to be done within family courts and divorce, domestic violence, supervised visitation. I think there's a lot of help to be lent there, and I think that we're the people that could do it in terms of parent education, really looking at systems, looking at variables. So really, really glad that you're delving into that work of forensic ABA, if you will. As we thought might be the case, 2 hours have come and gone. Here we are. Anything we didn't cover that you want to put out there? Certainly tell people where to find you as we wrap up here so that they know how to tap into your excellent resources and understand, get a better grip of the work that you're doing ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, the one last plug I'd like to say is that I think Dr. Scott might have mentioned this when he was on, but We do have a new group that we have developed. We have a name now. So we're the Society for the Expansion of Behavior Analysis.
Awesome.
I'm the executive vice president. And so we are working to try to all come together and make a way to branch out outside of autism. And we are actively looking for people that want to get involved with that. They're welcome to reach out to me and I will get them hooked up with when we have our meetings. But you can find me on LinkedIn, pretty active on there, and then on Instagram at Rooted Consultation. So you're welcome to follow me in either of those places. And I will always just be running my mouth trying to advocate for people to break out of autism. But if you're going to be in autism, make it better.
Quick idea that I know we had. I think we kicked it around with Dr. Scott and then Suzanne as well. But maybe we host one of your guys' meetings for the podcast, if you think that would be a good way to disseminate that information. And we're game to help. We're very interested in the work that you guys are doing to move that forward. Again, we're looking at other areas that might be able to utilize our content expertise. And I think it's an important theme just to diversify our knowledge base, and more importantly, our reach, I think. So thank you so much for all the work you've done. I'd like to end up with a quick little synopsis of all the gems you left us with, and then our tagline. So what I've got today is: you don't have to work with ASD to do ABA. Don't blame your staff. They're not lazy. Let kids be kids, and
always analyze responsibly.
Cheers, Nicole. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Always analyze responsibly.
ABA on Tap is recorded live and unfiltered. We're done for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time.